Should I collect some questions or one by one?
See how it goes.
Okay, so I think I collect. Professor Jasmine, we will start.
So first of all, thank you for an incredibly interesting series of papers. I get struck at the absence of the word state from most of these last presentations. And Shai, if I were to take a German example, but then to the multiple cultural contexts. I mean, it seems to me that medicalization may be the wrong end of the stick to start with, that one would need to get into the reasoning of the court, of the initial court that said that circumcision was not allowed, and get into the Kantian logic of the development of the person. And we've seen Germany wrestle with a number of cases of this sort, where different prohibitions have run into one another. So the selection case with the PGD, where they do a flip-flop, I would put it side by side with two other notorious cases. One is the circumcision, the other is the cannibalism. I mean, you know, in each of those, it seems to me that what's coming up is some sort of fairly constitutional, I mean, fundamental legal notions of what a thinking, developing person in that state ought to be like and ought to be, what kind of autonomy that person should be allowed. And then the medicalization, if you want to call it that, becomes a matter of how to put two conflicting logics of human development together. The religious, where the importance it lies in belonging to that community, which is ritualized, but also the secular state's idea, which is you develop as a full-blown persona. I mean, that is, I think, even the original German decision would have allowed the person to opt for circumcision as an adult, right? I mean, they were saying adult circumcision was okay, but not infant circumcision, where the child had no control over this infliction of pain that might lead to trauma, that might lead to, you know, sort of detriment to the persona that we have no way of knowing about. And then the conversion of it into a medical thing strikes me as the compromise, where Germany in particular has already dedicated enormous powers to its therapeutic arm to do various things, which, you know, is a development that can be historicized in various ways. And then if you sort of take those intuitions, you know, that what is the, I mean, there are three sets of major powers that you have working in these cases: religion, medicine, and the state. And the state is the one that I think has been backgrounded in the stories. I think that in each of them, bringing the state forward would give us a different sense of what the states are. And, I mean, you know, so what is the place of the community in relation to other organizational forms in Dr. Raz's paper? And I don't really understand what paradigm shift means in Zippi's paper, because what does a paradigmatic shift mean? Is it a different understanding of whether certain sets of responsibilities are delegated into the private sphere of the family, or even more intimate sphere of the maternal-child relationships, as opposed to being amalgamated into a state-citizen relationship? You know, I was reminded of the change in Italian law, where not so long ago, frozen embryos had no particular status, and then they enacted a law to make those embryos wardens of the state. I mean, you know, that there's a case in which they were confronted with a sense that what was needed in this area was law. I mean, they kept talking about it as the Wild West because it was a lawless frontier, and then the states stepped in. I think in the Japanese case, I would be very interested to hear a bit more about what the states are, and leaving conversations in the private neutralized domain as opposed to taking it away from there into questions of public health and medicine, which seems to me to improve, a public-private boundary is being drawn or not drawn or transgressed or not transgressed in these cases. Anyway, so let's leave it at that as an observation.
I'll collect another question or two. So I had you on now. So José.
Yeah, I have a question to each of you. I wonder whether you could elaborate a bit more on the relentless and pioneering, in the sense that, to me at least, I could understand the pioneering. You were much more detailed on that, and you seemed to leave the reckless a bit unspoken, sort of more to our imagination of, by drawing comparisons to security legislation, to ethnic profiling at airports and so on. But I wonder what your evaluation is if you have to decide on the balance of reckless and or pioneering, what your own position is on that. What are the benefits of the pioneering? Do they outweigh the reckless in your view, or are the dangers of this recklessness greater than the benefits that we seem to have now? Or I wasn't clear in the end what your position is on this. You kind of seemed, to me, it wasn't exactly clear what your position is. And to Shai, I understand why you present Israel as pre-secular from a legal point of view. But in terms of the practice that you described, using secular doctors, using licensed circumciser and non-licensed circumciser, there seems to be a much greater variety here, which is not legally regulated. But I would say from your presentation, Israel is pre-secular on a legal level, but not on a practical level.
Go ahead.
Is there anyone before? Okay.
I didn't see anyone, maybe.
Okay.
I missed someone.
It's a question for Shai about your use of the term religious. I'm not sure that circumcision is the best place to apply the term religious. In a way, paradoxically, maybe circumcision is one of the deepest kinds of what we used to call originally was definitely a religious practice in both the Islam and the Judaism. But it runs so deep that the religious guise, which has been its original function, may have been lost without losing its deep meaning. So, and I think that is quite common both to Islam and Judaism in modern secular countries, and for otherwise secular people, for whom circumcision, without being sanctified, is meaningful as the primeval kind of belonging to a community. Tribe. Maybe tribe. A little wider.
Very large tribes.
Very large tribe.
It's a lineage.
It's
a lineage.
Lineage.
Round of answers, response. Sipi, you're far away. Maybe you start. You were the first.
As for a paradigm shift, I don't think there's a paradigm shift either way. What do I consider a paradigm shift? I was thinking that I was looking for it as an anthropologist on the ground. I was wondering whether the introduction of a new test that is explicitly selective and speaks the language of genetics, which is absent in public sphere. I was wondering whether people will start thinking about their health in terms of genes and chromosomes, but I don't see this happening at all. I also don't see the doctors and genetic counselors communicating about health with genes and chromosomes. So for me, a paradigm shift would be if women, genetic counselors, doctors will start thinking with ideas about genetics. But it seems to me the genetic thinking that I documented in Israel has to do with the whole paradigm of what a person is and what health means. Because in Japan, health is all about how people make it. It's a process. And this is what was emphasized throughout my, when I did my fieldwork during the first years of 2000s. This is what doctors would say to women all the time. You are making the health of your baby through your nutrition and your everyday life conducts, including your well-being, your mental health. And I don't see this discourse changing in the clinic. I don't see women speaking differently. What I am seeing is that the state did not make a statement. The state offered a new test. This is what happened in 1999. The state came to the JSOC, to the Japanese Association of Obstetricians and Genetics, and the state said, "Here, there's a good test, and they're doing it in the U.S. Why don't we do this screening?" And the JSOC said, "No." The JSOC discussed this test for 3 days, and the result was that they said this is not irresponsible. It's irresponsible to tell women that there is such test because the credibility is so low. So what I'm seeing in Japan is that it's not the state really. The state introduces all kinds of ideas and techniques and technologies, but the people who really control this technological discourse and practice zone are the JSOC. And they're conflicted about this because they see these tests as irresponsible. And now that the NIPT was, the guidelines were issued and it's formally there only for women over 35 and all these limitations. In Israel, by the way, it's not limited to women of any age, and anybody can consume the NIPT. And it's not limited to 3 chromosome anomalies. It's a whole screening of the genome. It's a totally different thing. So in terms of private and public, I don't think the Japanese, neither the state nor the JSOC, they're not thinking about the women as private agents that should be made to choose. Although the idioms of choice are all around, but the genetic counselors are complaining that women cannot make choices. So the whole perception of who's the client, who's the patient is totally different, and what's the client wants, and what authority means. Authority means taking care of the patient and telling her what to do. It's not frightening her. So this is...
Two very quick rejoinders.
One is people are willing to stay 5 minutes longer.
Well, I mean, the whole language of paradigm shift is very ironic to import into cases that are as rich as yours is, and not ethnographical. I mean, the man who coined that term paradigm shift leached society out of his understanding of what a paradigm is. So it's kind of weird to have that very stripped down and reductionist language used in a context that seems to me to be crying out for other kinds of theoretical languages to do it justice. And secondly, I wasn't really interested in whether this is happening or not. I just think it's the wrong language to begin with, to describe the things. I mean, to some extent, when one looks into a case, one has to think very hard about what is key to bring out about this case. And, it seems to me that there's a kind of inarticulate sense of what the right theoretical tools for the job would be to do justice to the dynamics of the cases. I think that's the point of what I was trying to make.
What do you think is the problem thing?
Well, you've been warned about that.
I'm sorry, but we have to continue. There are two. I think you have to answer the questions that were posed to you.
Then I can jump in.
I also want to continue, so.
Okay.
And I hold myself. I need to do it. So,
to answer my question first. I think that I did highlight the critical aspect, the recklessness of the community genetics approach in Israel by drawing attention to the set of questions that are being asked by bioethicists, by public health policymakers. So, who defines the community? What is the community consent that is being implemented? What kind of community representation do we have here? And these questions are not answered, are not considered sometimes in the Israeli context. So that would be the recklessness. Mm-hmm. Now, as for my own position, which I agree with you on that, I have refrained from taking one. And I have done so because it's a complex position. So now that you are pushing me to the corner, I have to admit, if I were to state a position, then it would be a dialectical one, because you should consider these things on a case-by-case basis. I can present several cases in which that were reckless, totally reckless.
In what sense?
One of them I documented in a book called The Gene and the Genie. It had to do with offering Dor Yeshorim program to the Bedouin community, and the program failed completely due to resistance by the consumers, by the Bedouin. In other cases, I think you could call it pioneering, and you can say that the benefits outweigh the disadvantages. I think the Dor Yeshorim is basically an excellent, a wonderful program that you could not have brought genetic testing to this particular community without Dor Yeshorim. Having said that, I think the Dor Yeshorim could have done even a better job by introducing an educational component to what it is doing. But again, this is on a case-by-case basis. May I now jump in?
We actually are really running short, so
okay.
If it's brief.
Just very, very briefly. So I think that CP's project is really exciting in the sense that you are you are taking a pedestrian view, in situ view, into a process of domestication, of localization. So I would avoid the general paradigm shift, because we don't know still what is going to happen with this. But you see here a case of a Western technology, medical technology, NIPT, that is being domesticated into Japan because of in post-Fukushima disaster Japan. And when I first heard about NIPT, that Yael and me with German colleagues and I studying in the context of Israel and Germany, I said to myself, this is the genetic test for Japan. NIPT fits post-Fukushima Japan in the same sense that Tokyo Disneyland was fitting for Japan in the 80s. Because we have here the same metaphorical and practical domestication taking place. For example, when you mentioned the recipe metaphor, this is actually used in the West in the context of epigenetics. So it fits in.
Have time to go into this.
Exactly. So it fits into the soft environmental Japanese.
I must stop you. I also want to jump in, and I will talk to you, Tzipi, at the break,
So
because I really
we'll
have
talk about it.
many questions, but I have to let Shai.
Okay, so
respond.
very briefly, Sheila. So I guess the law is always is there from the beginning when I talk about imposing medical criteria. But I guess what you're saying specifically with respect to the German case, specifically in light of designs on nature and the question of a specific kind of legality, the constitutionalism, principled legalism of the German system, and the Kantianism that continues there. I guess for constitutional lawyers, the criminalization of circumcision came generally as a surprise, and it's by far not a consensual among the constitutional lawyers. There's a specific kind of constitutionalism that goes on in criminalizing circumcision, a very secularist reading of what the Constitution entails. And it's Kantianism not from the principles of morality, but it's a Kantianism from religion within the boundaries of reason. And it's the meeting of these two that play out. And there's also a way of showing the network, the secularist network that was operated specifically in this case in Cologne, that was led first by physicians, then by lawyers, then made its way to the courts, and we trace this in our research. Jose, yes, you're right. My pre-secularism in the Israeli case is about the legal system and not about the medical system and about the practicalities of day-to-day life outside of the legal system. But okay, here you go. So I think that there's an interesting a question open there, even without the law, of what happens when people want to circumcise their children. So a month ago, I actually had the opportunity to do that, and so we were faced with the dilemma whether we wanted a traditional mohel circumciser or one who was traditional but also had medical credentials. And our intuitive position was we would never want to have a medical physician involved in this. It's like, so when I was trying to rationalize it, I thought, like, if you have a plumber, do you want a plumber or do you want a plumber with a dissertation? It's clearly you don't go to the plumber with an engineering, with an engineering degree. So there is that also in the background. David, you say circumcision is not religious, and I think you're using the modern sense of, so this would be my argument at least, that you're using the modern sense of religion when you say that circumcision is no longer religious. But when we go back, it's actually an open question of what exactly was circumcision before the secular age. Was it not exactly what we talk about, some tribal, deeply rooted and grounded? God was also there, but how central was he to the story? So I actually think that I think that circumcision in that way is actually a classic case of understanding what is left from religion in modernity.
So I'm very happy that we all want to talk some more. That's a good sign. It was a very interesting session. At least for me. I hope you all enjoyed it too, and thank you very much.